If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, man.
I jumped the gun because I'm so excited to talk about this win. So let's get right to it. The Knicks took care of business Wednesday night, hammering the Nets 142-118 at Madison Square Garden. It was an offensive explosion as New York posted 81 first half points. Jalen Brunson, who had 30 at the half, finished the game with 39 points. It was also a breakout game for Quentin Grimes. He had 22 points in the win. He made 6 threes. As a team, the Knicks were 20 for 35 from downtown. They shot 60% from the floor. It was just a just dominant performance from the Knicks offensively. There was not much takeaway positively for the Nets in this game, but Cam Johnson, they just acquired in that trade for Kevin Durant. He did have a good game. He had 33 points this one. He had 7 threes, but it was not enough as the Knicks rout the Brooklyn Nets. So let's start with this. Like, Tommy, how did and why did the Knicks dominate the Nets so easily in this one?
I'm going to start, well, obviously, we'll start with Jalen Brunson. 30 points on 12 of 14 shooting in the first half. Knicks scored 81. I don't know if it was the best single half the Knicks have played this century, this millennium, but it's certainly up there on a very short list. They just could not miss. Shot 70% from downtown for the game, above 50%. Put it this way: the Knicks had a higher percentage on 3-point attempts than Obi Toppin had on dunk attempts last night. So that just gives you a little idea of how hot the Knicks were from beyond the arc. But and we'll get into all the specifics. I think, just starting out, like, big picture stuff, I thought the start of the second half was interesting in the fact that it was an uneven second half, an uneven third quarter, as we expected. When you get a big lead like that, game's going to get sloppy and choppy and all that stuff. But I thought it was interesting on the first defensive possession of the first half of the second half. I noted Julius Randle fought through two screens, bodied through them, got to his man, challenged defensively, close out on shooters. The other thing Randle did, and he's going to get kind of lost in the he only had 21, 8, and 8 last night.
Yeah, pedestrian by his standards.
But just when it one kind of stretch of, I think it was 3 or 4 possessions in a row in the first half, the start of the second quarter, found Quentin Grimes for a wide open 3, found Mitch Robinson for a dunk, came down again, found Grimes for another 3-pointer. We kind of expect Jalen Brunson to play. Shockingly, he's not going to score 39 every night. But dating back to January 1st, we got that's 2 full months of data here. Jalen Brunson's averaging 28.6 points while shooting over 51% from the floor, over 46% from 3. He's just playing at a ridiculously high level. Even if that comes back down to earth and he's at his seasoned average of around 24, 25 a night efficiently, the Knicks can kind of unlock their potential when Randle does the little things, play hard defensively, fight through screens, and spray the ball to open 3-point shooters. And obviously, the other part of that equation is Quentin Grimes catching, shooting, and knocking down those shots.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did last night. We are, Grimes believers here. I don't think we've ever lost faith in him. I think we all assumed it's only a matter of time before he snapped out of a little mini slump that he's been in. And he did so last night. We saw kind of, when he's playing well, and not only can he knock down threes, he attacks the basket. We know what he gives the team defensively. There's just a lot to like there. So we got the Brunson kind of, obviously he's the lead story, but then we have the complementary pieces, the Randle and Brunson as the cornerstones. We know what Josh Hart does, 7-0, only 4 and 5, 4 points, 4 boards, 5 assists last night. He was plus 30 in 25 minutes. Josh Hart. And that's a quintessential Josh Hart line. 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 floor burns, jumping into the front row on a team up 25 points. And again, that second half, he jumped into the first row, Knicks up 25 points. Jalen Brunson taking charges with the Knicks up 30 points. It's it's those little things, Randle, joking with Brunson post-game press conferences, and they're smiling and they're happy on the floor and they're goofing around with each other. It's those little things that build into the bigger thing. And when you sum all that together, talent, chemistry, Tibbs making the right decisions, playing the younger guys, all these things factor into a mix you get a team that, for 41 games now, dating back to they shortened the rotation to December 4th. That's 41 games. That's exactly half a season. Knicks are 27-14. Only two teams in the NBA have a better have more wins. Only one team in the NBA has a better net rating. The Knicks are real. They are here. They should be taken seriously. And it's going to be fun to see how this plays out over the final 15 plus games of the regular season.
Ooh, it's gonna be good, Tommy. It's gonna be good. Look, that game on Wednesday night. First of all, the shooting was unreal. I mean, the Knicks shooting the ball that well, especially in that first quarter, putting up 47 points. I mean, I that was the best quarter of basketball the Knicks have probably played maybe in 20 years. I mean, that's how dominant they were offensively. And a lot of it was they were getting good looks. They weren't hesitating on those shots. And once one guy saw one go down, then everybody else started getting into the fray. You mentioned Quentin Grimes. I like that he was aggressive. I like that he was not hesitating on whether or not to shoot or whether or not to pass or whether or not, because sometimes I think on this team, because he has so many other offensive players who can get their own, sometimes I think he hesitates on whether or not he should, kind of get in the action. He kind of gets locked into just being that defensive guy. The Knicks are going to need him to be a factor offensively as well. And we know he's capable. And last night was a great example of that. Again, 8 for 12 from the field, 22 points in this game. And his jump shot looked just pure in this one. You mentioned Josh Hart. I mean, how about Josh Hart ripping the ball out of Daron Sharp's hands in the second half on a rebound like he was Zion Williamson on Kevin Knox? I mean, it was crazy watching how Hart, even when he's not scoring, can impact the game in so many different ways. And you mentioned Jalen Brunson. 39 points on 18 shot attempts is ridiculous. I mean, that's just like, that efficiency is crazy. He was 5 for 6 from the 3-point line. If he made both, the only thing he made all his free throws this time, though the Knicks continue to have struggles with the free throws. That was the only thing offensively the Knicks continue to struggle with. But I mean, Brunson, that was as close to pitching a perfect game as you can have playing an NBA basketball game. Had scored 39 points in 36 minutes on 15 for 18 and 5 for 6 from 3. I mean, what is that? In baseball, that's like pitching a complete game shutout where you throw.
EJ, I didn't check Twitter. I didn't check Twitter last night. Did Spencer Dinwiddie tweet a lot of stuff last night? Was he saying much on social media? Because he's been talkative with KD and Kyrie on his side. Did he say anything about Brunson's performance last night? I didn't see that.
Yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie seemed very quiet last night. Which is funny because even after the last game, I guess he didn't realize what had happened and what had changed when it came to the hierarchy of power in New York basketball. Because after the last game when the Knicks spanked these guys, I guess he's still thinking that KD and Kyrie are coming through that door, to quote Rick Pitino, because he's like, oh, next game, we're looking forward to seeing those guys again. And then Spencer Dinwiddie in this game posted a minus 18 in this one. He shot 3 for 10 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3. And his man, the guy that his contemporary at the point guard position, pitched a shutout, essentially. 39 points, 15 for 18 from the field. So not much from Spencer Dinwiddie. I don't think we'll be hearing much from him in this rivalry moving forward. So it was just an absolute dominant performance by the New York Knicks. And I really do want to harping on this Quentin Grimes case, because to me, I know we've talked about X factors on this team. I like that Knicks team is like that when Quentin Grimes plays like that. Like, I think when you say, what is the max offensive potential of this team? If they get Quentin Grimes shooting the ball like that, they can put up 120, 130, 140 points on some teams, because you're going to get quality play from Randall. You're going to get quality play from Brunson. IQ is going to bring it. RJ is a little bit of a mixed bag. He played very well last night offensively. And Mitch Robinson, he was dominant in this game as well. So you're going to get your offense from certain guys. If you get that kind of offensive output from Quentin Grimes, that's when you say, okay, now the Knicks go from being a good offensive team to potentially a great offensive team.
100%. I'm just looking it up right now. Quentin Grimes has scored over 14 points 12 times this year, 13 times this year. They are 11-2 in those games. So that just kind of lends credence to the fact that when he gets going, It's a very good sign for the team, because again, you kind of know what you got from you know what you're going to get from Brunson. You know what you're going to get from Randall last night. And I wrote a little bit about this morning, just kind of looking at the bigger picture and the grand scheme of things, because expectations have to be adjusted now. Like this team,
Yeah.
7-game win streak, average margin of victory during these 7 games is 16 points. Again, they are not just winning games; they are dominating teams. And they've been a good team for a long time. They are a great team during this current
Yeah.
stretch. Now, history tells us, and common NBA thinking, lets us know an NBA team can only go so far if they don't have a top tier elite NBA superstar, which the Knicks don't have. However, what's going to be fun and really interesting going forward is what about if a team has 2 all NBA caliber talents? Because both, forget about Brunson being an all star now, which is even more, not being an all star, which is even more laughable than it was a month ago.
Yeah.
Both Brunson and Randall. I don't know if they're going to make All NBA. We'll have that conversation a month from now. But they're in the conversation, certainly. Make no mistake about it. When you factor in the Knicks record, their production, their efficiency, all that stuff, they're All NBA caliber players. If they're not one of the 15 best players in the NBA this season, they're in that top 20, top 25 discussion. So the question is, what's the ceiling of a team that has 2 all NBA caliber talents surrounded by 7 players who all excel in their roles? When you have Mitchell Robinson, 3 games in a row, he's yet to miss a shot. In fact, I looked it up this morning on Basketball Reference. He is the first player in NBA history to have 3 straight double-doubles and shoot 100% from the floor in each of those 3 contests. First and only player in NBA history. We talked about Grimes knocking down 3-pointers. We talked about Josh Hart and the bench. That second unit since Josh Hart has arrived during the 7-game win streak, the best net rating, unsurprisingly, in the NBA in terms of their reserves. IQ, 15 points on 50% shooting. I mean, listen, if it's a day of the week that ends in Y, then IQ is going to give you 15 to 20 points. He's going to he's going to shoot around, shoot a high percentage. He's going to give you plenty on the defensive end, play passing lanes. Hartenstein, 8-8. 3 assists and a couple blocks last night. You love what he's given you as part of that second unit. The only 2 kind of, the guys that really haven't exploded of late are Obi Toppin and RJ Barrett. If and when these guys start, succeeding in their roles, becoming superstars in their roles. Again, that's not RJ scoring 23 points a night. That's RJ scoring, maybe 16 points on 55% shooting from the floor, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and solid defense. And Obi coming in, getting a few easy baskets, knocking down the corner 3-pointers when they're there, and again, improving himself defensively. If all those pieces can kind of function, and Brunson, again, the key piece that unlocks it all is obviously Brunson. When you have that guy, you have a chance in any playoff series. So it'll be very interesting to see just what this team's ceiling is with that kind of roster construction.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that gets kind of underrated when we think about this Knicks ceiling in the postseason, because I think the reason why some will look at this team and say they're playing great, but what are they going to do when they play against these other teams that have superstar players? We kind of forget. I mean, Jalen Brunson in that first round series against the Utah Jazz led a team primarily without Luka Doncic and played like a superstar. I mean, there's actually more indication that he's going to play just as good, if not better, in the postseason than he's played in the regular season, because the best we've ever seen him play before this season was when he was leading his own team in the playoffs against another high caliber team, the Utah Jazz. So, like, I think that we say, oh, what's going to happen in the postseason? I mean, Jalen Brunson, among the top scorers in clutch points this season, one of the top scorers in fourth quarter points this season, a guy who already has playoff experience, has closed teams out in the postseason. I mean, why not? Why not Jalen Brunson being one of those guys who in the postseason is leading Knicks to 1 or 2 series wins? I think that now you have to look at the way they're playing and say, maybe this is the guy. Maybe this is the guy that can get them to maybe not the mountaintop, but maybe a little closer than maybe we thought coming into the season.
and closer than they have been in a really long
And a
time.
long time, exactly.
And the other thing to note is they would match up against the Cavs in the first round, who just so happened to have this guy named Donovan Mitchell, who Jalen Brunson dominated in the aforementioned first round series against the Jazz, last year. So that's and that's something else. One thing to note, just in terms of Brunson, and again, I thought that second half was interesting. The fact that if the game had been close, Jalen Brunson had a legitimate chance to make a run at 62, the scoring record in
Yeah.
Madison Square Garden. Again, he's finished with 39 on 15 of 18 shooting, which is mind-boggling. But it's very notable, I think, that he only attempted 4 shots in the second half, which tells me a couple things. One, it was obvious that the Nets came out of halftime and said, we're probably going to lose, but we're definitely not going to lose by giving up a 60 burger to Jalen
Yeah.
Brunson. If we have a chance of coming back, we got to cut off the head of the snake. And they started running 2 guys consistently in Brunson. What does Brunson do?
Exactly.
Unselfishly finds the open man, whether it's Randall at the nail, or Hardenstein or Mitch Rob, Grimes knocking down 3-pointers. And that's what we expect him to do, because as he said after the game, he's asked about his statistical production. He said, listen, all I care about is wins. And proof is in the pudding. Actions speak louder than words. So we know that, I think that the Jazz were probably caught off guard just by how well.
Definitely last season. Yeah.
They expect them to play well, but not that well without Luka. Now we have that series and the rest of the Mavs playoff run, and now we have 80 plus. We'll have 80 plus games of Jalen Brunson dominance in the regular season. So it'll be challenging for Brunson. But as I mentioned, that's where you come in the complementary pieces. That's when Randall can excel as a facilitator. That's when when Barrett can be a connector on the offensive end. If Grimes knocks down his threes, we know that these guys can put a defensive team at the end of the game on the floor at the end of the game for the final 8 minutes with a combination of IQ and/or Grimes, Hart, Mitch Rob at the back line that are going to make it difficult to score. So even if the teams decide to really shut down Brunson, having all these other pieces, complementary pieces that can excel in their roles, you have a very interesting, dangerous team. And listen. No team's going to say, I'm scared of the Knicks. I don't want to play the Knicks. Every team at the top of that Eastern Conference, if you give them some truth serum, is going to tell you, I want no part of New York in the first round, because that's a dangerous, scary team right now.
I totally agree with that. And I think with Brunson, I think the Nets in some ways did the Knicks a favor with that second half, because I think there is a very good chance that when they get to the playoffs, you'll see teams guard Brunson the way the Nets were trying to guard Brunson. Because you can't guard him one-on-one. I mean, if you really decide you're just going to guard him one-on-one, he's going to kill you. So I think that I expect when the Knicks get to the postseason, and whoever that first round matchup is, that you'll see teams running doubles at them. And I hope that he see more doubles during these last 20 some odd games or 18 games, whatever they got left in the season, because the Knicks have to be prepared for what they're going to do when they take the ball out of Brunson's hands. Because you play basketball at the grade school level, whenever a team's got a top-notch point guard, the strategy is always cut the head of the snake. So I expect that any team that's going to play against the Knicks in the playoffs are going to try to get the ball out of Brunson's hands. He saw Mikal Bridges was picking him up full court, not letting him get the ball inbounded at certain points in that second half. And I think the Knicks being able to hold off the Nets, essentially they tied them in the second half. The Nets won the third quarter by just 1 point. Knicks won the fourth quarter by 1 point. So essentially it was a wash in a game that the Knicks were up by 24 points. So and the fact that the Knicks were able to execute still while Brunson having to get the ball off the way as much as he was, I think that was great, kind of, almost like scout teamwork. It's crazy. I'm talking about the Nets as a scout team. That's kind of what they were in that second half. The Knicks being able to get that work and understand what their strategies are. There were so many times in that second half where I see Josh Hart pulling Hartenstein saying, hey, actually, when they do this, you got to be here. IQ was talking to someone at some point in the game, well, say, hey, I think we should do this. Like, they were talking through things as they were kicking the crap out of the Brooklyn Nets. So a lot of this work that they got in this game was good. And in many ways, again, it felt like a scrimmage in that second half, because they got to work on things that I think are going to be important for the playoffs.
And the other thing with Brunson, and it'll be interesting to see, maybe teams decide, hey, let JB get his, and we'll keep Randall in check. We won't let Grimes get open threes. You know, maybe that's the case if Brunson has 12 assists and the Knicks win by 8 in game 1, and then game 2. That's what postseason adjustments are all about, which is where Tibbs will have to earn his money. And we'll discuss that if and when the time comes. But just in terms of the Nets game, I remember us talking on the pod previewing the second Nets game. The previous Nets game prior to this one was 10 days ago, whatever the case was.
Yeah, it was 13th, I think.
Yeah, it was the first game after the Nets had acquired Mikal Bridges and after the trade deadline and Harper's here. And we talked about will Mikal Bridges be able to slow down Jalen Brunson, who's been playing at an incredibly level, because we know how good of a defender Mikal Bridges is. Last 2 games against Brooklyn, Brunson has scored 79 points on 38 field goal attempts. I mean, that's again, the guy is playing at a level at which nobody could have anticipated. It's been incredible.
And the last thing I'll say on this game is I think that we have seen an official shift in this Brooklyn Nets New York Knicks dynamic. Like I went on WFAN and said the Knicks were going to watch these guys, and they went out and watched these guys. It wasn't that surprising how much they beat them down, to be honest. Like, I think that's a Nets team that's still trying to find themselves. They have pieces that are good, maybe in a vacuum, but I don't know necessarily fit. And I think the Knicks are going to kind of be the big dogs in this rivalry moving forward. Like, unless the Nets find a way to make a trade or do something to bring in a star and consolidate some of the pieces that they have, I think that 9-game losing streak the Knicks went on, they may be able to go on a 9-game winning streak against the Brooklyn Nets, because the last two times these two teams played, they look like they shouldn't have been on the same floor. Mitchell Robinson's on Twitter this morning saying he's the best center in New York City. I kind of thought IQ took the matchup with Cam Thomas personally, because, I mean, there were times he stripped the ball right out of his hands. It just seemed like every time Cam Thomas was on him, he was going right after him. Like, I think the Knicks see these guys on that other side and say, that's food, and they're going out there to destroy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I think it circles the turning point when we look back, and if that's the case for the next 3 or 4 years, will be the signing of Jalen Brunson. You know, like I wrote about it this morning. The Knicks won 37 games last year. They were 37-45. The Knicks this morning are 37-27. So they've already matched last season's total. 8 of the 10 Knick rotation players, guys, in terms of most points scored, most minutes played from last season, returned this season. The only 2 guys that aren't there, Alec Burks and Kemba Walker, who made way for a new point guard. And that new point guard has changed this franchise immeasurably in a very short amount of time. Something for you to discuss on an overnight sometime on WFAN.
Yeah.
Is Brunson? Yes, he's in the conversation for greatest. If this continues, it's early. We got plenty of time, but conversations are fun. At this point, you know, he's up there with the greatest Knick free agent signings: the John Starks, the Anthony Masons, the Allen Houstons. What about in New York sports history? Where does he rank? If he goes, you know, Reggie Jackson, you know, like Wayne Gretzky, you know, had a big turnaround. Curtis Martin for the Jets,
right,
in the late 90s. So all these guys that just, you know, you can pinpoint the time and place when the franchise kind of changed direction, changed trajectory, and the Knicks are on a new trajectory, and a lot of it has to do with the captain of the ship, and that's Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, definitely when it comes to free agent signings in New York sports history, I mean, he's got to be up there. I think in terms of just moves in total, he's got to be up there. I mean, I'm thinking Mark Messier,
right?
You know, trade, Dave DeBusschere, a trade. You know, there are certain moves that you say, okay, there were trades that were done that, you know, but I think, I mean, yeah, we're kind of in the middle of this. We don't know where this is going to go, but it just looks like the trajectory is extremely optimistic for the Knicks with Jalen Brunson at the helm. So a big win for the New York Knicks. They pound the Nets 142-118 at MS3. 7-game winning streak now for the New York Knicks. And they now, after coming off of a 3-0 homestand, it's funny, we did this podcast last Friday. We were like, hey, what are we looking here? 2-1, I guess, is probably your best case scenario. Now they're 3-0 in that homestand. Now they
blowouts.
Yes, dominant, just dominant performances in all 3 of them. They now